Those who are not familiar with the World War I story, Ellington Field was a field to train flyers primarily, but the flyers also needed radio communication with the ground, and our function was to train the radio operators. I had been sent there to establish the radio school. The airplane in this picture is the so-called Jenny. At the lower left, you'll see the antenna reel, which contained several hundred feet of wire and a lead-weight fish, as it was called. At the center, above the engine, you'll see a French combined transmitter. It contained all of the elements except the key, and it was driven by a propeller to generate the power. This is another view of the same airplane showing the transmitter above the center panel of the upper plane. This shows the reel on the left side of the plane with the operator putting his hand out as if he were in the air so he could slowly break the cable which was being lowered. Otherwise, if the cable stopped with a jerk, the weight would drop off, break off, and I suspect that there are about a ton of lead weights around the field. This is the airplane showing an antenna reel located on the right. There's no significance as to the location. This shows the flame-proof key located on the right below the throttle. To the left, or about on the center, on the shelf, is a storage battery, which is used to power the SCR-67 spark transmitter. In this case, to avoid the possibility of fire, the spark is located in the container and visible through a small window. This is a better view of the spark transmitter SCR-67.
I would like to interrupt for a moment and show one of these airplane transmitters, which is in the AWA Museum. The spark gap is at lower left, the spark coil at right with the condenser to the left of it. The only other component in the transmitter was a coil mounted on the cover. And here is a group photograph of the radio officers at Ellington Field. Seated at dead center with Clarence Tuska at his left is Lieutenant Elmo Pickerel, pioneer radio operator who worked with DeForest in 1904 and who 6 years later became the first to communicate from an airplane to ground by radio. Tuska was eventually transferred to the firing center at Camp McClellan. And now, what is this building at Camp McClellan? Don't I see an antenna above the roof there?
That was the mess shack, which we converted into a radio school. Above the center of the shack, you'll see the antenna, or supports for the antenna. This is a better view of the antenna on the radio shack at Ellington Field. This shows the code instruction room in the building at Camp McClellan. This is a view of the same room converted into a classroom where a small amount of theory was taught, as we couldn't spend all of the time training the operators for code. We are now showing the erection of an antenna using the portable pack at Camp McClellan. The students were arranged in two teams, and they would race to see who could get the portable station into operation first. Another view showing the portable antenna pole being erected. This is a staff picture taken at the University of Texas in Austin, showing the school, which had grown greatly about the time that I was ordered elsewhere.
And what happened when the war ended?
Armistice came during the end of my tour of duty at Camp McClellan. I was very anxious to get home. I wanted to get into the commercial activity of radio as distinguished from the amateur end. So I quickly sought my discharge papers and went to my home in Hartford, Connecticut.
For a short time on his return, he's with the ARRL, and then he left and formed his own manufacturing company. He was later an executive with the Atwater Kent Company and retired as Director of Patents for the Radio Corporation of America Laboratories. Hiram Percy Maxim remained with the League, and here he is operating his station 1AW just after the war. I'm sure all amateurs are familiar with the call W1AW. It was originally Maxim's personal call, and after his death in 1936, became the official call letters for the ARRL station. Note, there was no W. The W prefix wasn't added until 1927. The ARRL can be proud to have as its founders Hiram Percy Maxim and Clarence Tuska, two great radio pioneers and equally important, two very fine gentlemen. Here is an early post-war station using tube receivers. The old Rock Crusher spark transmitter, seen at left, had only a year or two before it would be banned. However, old-timers still love to hear the sound of these mighty giants. By 1922, the vacuum tube transmitter had taken over, and some amateurs were even experimenting with voice transmissions. But that is another story. I hope you enjoyed our little show covering the early years.